Hi there, welcome to Bible/Chat. Kevin, hello.
John, good morning. How are you?
I'm excellent. That style you got there with the hoodie and the vest. Were you
It's
chilly this morning?
it's winter, and as a fun fact, did you know the Dutch invented ice skating?
In wooden clogs.
Because we like things that are cold and cutting, like our personalities.
Also true. Also true. Thank you. Wow.
But it is winter, and it's kind of cold, so I wear a vest.
Yeah. That's awesome.
My wife got me this vest.
That's nice. It's very nice. It's a nice vest.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It's like 80 degrees.
That's a nice sweater you have.
Let's not.
Nice hoodie.
Let's not discuss. I'm also wearing a hood. Yes, good. Anyway, it just all of a sudden got uncomfortable for us here. Okay, so we had a great question that came up on pastors and the idea of sabbaticals. So maybe what's the history of a sabbatical? Where does that word come from? Yeah. What's the point there?
So in the word, you have the Sabbath idea, and Sabbath basically means stopping. And so it's just resting. It's based on God's rest. In Genesis, He sanctified the seventh day, right? In Israel, in Exodus 20, which we're in a care group, right, in our church, we're talking about the Sabbath command and the Ten Commandments, and then the sabbatical idea is basically just describing some undefined period of time in which a pastor is removing himself from the rigors of ministry. They're still at the church in a sense, formally. Yeah. They might take the summer and go into a cabin in the woods or write or something, or they're there's different ways it's used. Sometimes it's like if the pastor's an author, they're going to go write in the mountains, or they might go to another church, and it gets used in all these different ways. Yeah. But the basic idea of it is that you're basically giving them a break, and so that's kind of the idea. Now, how we talk about that is the next part of this.
Okay, so let's say I'm a cement contractor. If I'm like, hey, I'm going to take a sabbatical, and my customers to pay me, I'm just taking 2 weeks off, need a little break. What would people say?
You're fired.
Yeah.
Doesn't Europe take like a month off?
Do they?
And, I think there's different countries in Europe where they take like a month off of work.
Really?
Yeah. And
is it Holland?
So it might be. It's possible. The Dutch have been.
They didn't take a month off of conquest. Oh, just kidding.
We don't talk about that.
Yeah, let's not talk about our history.
But there's different periods of rest there. But it's weird because to your point, it does make this kind of work somehow different from just life.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't be like, I'm taking a sabbatical from being dad.
Yeah. Of
it's
course.
like, that's crazy.
Yeah.
But it is common to do sabbaticals for various reasons.
Yeah.
So
that's good.
What reasons have you heard?
Don't turn this on me. Are there biblical places where we see people who are in ministry taking rest?
Well, I think rest is one thing, but that's the question of like, Jesus got up early to pray and be with his Father. And so that's one thing.
Yeah. He does seem to take the disciples away at times and say like, hey, let's go away and rest. So there's this picture like he's pulling them away from ministerial responsibilities for short periods of time.
Mm-hmm. And then they meet him on the other side.
Yeah. And they're like, oh, there he is.
Yeah, when he goes in the boat and he pulls away from the people, and then they go to they run around the lake on the other side.
Yeah.
It's interesting. So there's some pattern there. I think rest is good.
Yeah.
Just like the people talk about, while we're not under the Mosaic covenant, a rhythm of rest is good. Obviously, God built that into our days. Where we have to sleep. We have to be unconscious for a number of hours. And that's humbling.
That's good.
But the question becomes, what form that rest takes. And is it wise to be stepping away for months? And sometimes it's a year. And things. And
I've heard long periods of time. Yeah.
What's the longest you've heard?
A year.
That's a long time.
Yeah. I've heard 3 months, a year. Yeah. You hear different things.
Were they staying at the church?
It differs.
Yeah.
So I'll give you my perspective on this stuff, and then we can talk more about it. But my perspective on sabbaticals is that I think there's a healthy part of that. It's necessary. The reason for that is because I would say the pastoral ministry is slightly unique because pastoral work involves your heart, involves like your communion with Christ. And so the source of pastoral ministry actually flows out of communion with Christ.
Totally.
And so in ministry, there is like a sense where you're kind of like, there's kind of a constant motion of that, which is good and healthy. But then having a period of time where we're able to say like, hey, as opposed to doing that or like the regular preaching routine or whatever, I'm going to back up a little bit and just spend some time just meditating and spending time with Christ and just enjoy that as opposed to the busy rigors of making sure you're prepped for everything. So I think there's a healthy part of that. The length of that, I think, is just up to the person. I think like there's a restorative component to not having to continue to do that. And so that's just helpful. However long that needs to be to help that guy work through that process. I think there is a healthy part of that. In the same way that like a guy who's a contractor can say, hey, I'm going to go on vacation. We're going to wherever. Mexico. We're just going to go relax in Mexico for 2 weeks, or 3 weeks, or a month, or whatever. I mean, he can choose to make whatever whenever his schedule allows. So, in a very real sense, I think vacation is that. For a pastor, vacation is just a sabbatical, like the opportunity to take some time off. I personally, my personal conviction is that I'd prefer to stay at the church. I think like I get the guys who don't. They usually say that's because like there's so much demand on my time because people want to talk to me. And so I can't stay at the church and have people talk to me all the time and still be resting. I don't necessarily ascribe to that. I'd rather sit at church and just like enjoy the fellowship of the saints. And so people want to talk, that's fine. That's good. Like, people talk to people and that's a fellowship thing, and even if that's counsel, that's okay. That's still fellowship. So that's the way I would view that in terms of the sabbatical side of that.
Yeah. And it's a sweet thing. Like you mentioned before, to be able to sit and receive communion from somebody else who's administering it. It's a glorious thing, and so, there are points in which, like in Exodus, Moses could be overtaxed, in his role. So it's like, it's wise to find out how to relieve somebody. And Spurgeon said, a pastor cannot possibly get all his work done in 12 months, but he can get it done in 11. It's like, because if you take a break off, you're more refreshed and able to come back. So, I think it's just kind of sifting through what that rest looks like. And like you're saying, if you're just casually fellowshipping and even counseling, it's like you are enjoying the things of Christ in those conversations. And
one of the most glorious things to me is the body of Christ. So just like enjoying people and getting to be with the people of God is wonderful, and those conversations and encouragements and all that stuff is just a blessing, I've heard of guys who are like, I have somebody with me who guards me from people talking to me about stuff. I'm like, you got to chill out. But that there's a sense where that person's trying to protect, the goal is to like try to protect that rest. I mean, I personally, I just feel like church life is church life, and it's separate from like sabbatical resting. I think the sabbatical resting component of it is like the weekly grind of sermon prep and those kinds of things. That you try to like tone that down a little bit, and take some time off. But I think it's just healthy.
So rest good, mediating it through some sort of scaling back of responsibilities, but not a full abandonment of of anything, and then. Staying at the church, fellowshipping with the body, and communing with Christ there in that sense. Sounds good.
It's a blessing. The one thing I would say too is that because the pastoral office is an office of the heart, there is a need for like refreshing of the soul in such a way that you're able to like that communion with Christ, that joy in production, all those things are fueled by a heart that's like, hey, I've had time to think about this now. I've had time to pray over this. I've had time to focus on the ministry of the word and prayer. Where like with a busy schedule pastorally, it's really hard to get time to do those things, like to slow down life and say, okay, I've had time to pray and consider the those things. So just freeing a guy up to be able to do that. And I don't think it's just the preaching pastor. It's guys who are in any capacity doing that pastoral office, heart like work. Even heart work, like even elders, guys who are doing those kinds of things, giving them just a like, hey, take a month and you don't have to take that. You don't have to carry that burden right now, and just have freedom, just pray and be a part of the body and just receive.
Which is the word recreation. It's like you're recreating yourself.
Exactly.
All the strength and stuff you get from the Lord, rather than just entertainment or sitting and amusing yourself or whatever.
Totally.
It's like the Puritans, those guys who work super hard, we're talking about trying to go and do something to refresh themselves and all that. So it's a good, there's temptations on both sides, right? To not take a break, and when taking a break, how to do that incorrectly. So it's good to see that there's a wise median there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I mean, there is a Yeah, those temptations we could talk about.
Totally.
Like, I'm the king of this castle. That kind of nonsense. They're just so foolish, And the other side, like, it's not a big deal, And both those are probably not helpful.
Right.
But anyway.
Good.
Yeah, good. Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hope that's helpful for you. If you have questions on that or any other topic, you can feel free to email us at info@faithbibleoc.org. Thanks so much.